The Battle of B-R5RB, or also known as the Bloodbath of B-R5RB, was a massive scale war fight in the MMORPG EVE Online in 2014 and was possibly the largest player versus player event in the history of gaming back then. This 21-hour fight involved over 7,600 players in total, reaching a peak concurrent player count of 2,670, and totaled a loss of approximately 300,000 to 420,000 real-life USD. With such high stakes on the line and months of preparation lost, this war went down in history as one of the most expensive battles ever. Welcome to MMO History's Battle of B-R5RB. EVE Online is a game published in May 2003 and is renowned for its massive scale and complexity in regard to player interactions. With its open-ended sandbox design, EVE Online has fostered a unique universe driven by player interaction. Many events are held in real time, involving weeks, months, and sometimes even years of work to complete. In this single shared world, players engage in unscripted economic competition, warfare, and political schemes with other players. Alliances, the equivalent to guilds or clans in other games, can be formed, and coalitions, which are essentially partnerships between multiple alliances, can be formed as well, although there is no formal term or in-game mechanic for these super alliances. The Battle of B-R5RB was between two coalitions, CFC and Russian alliances, against the N3 Coalition and Pandemic Legion Alliance. Between the two coalitions involved, the war involved 717 player corporations and 55 alliances. Before going into the events of that day, there's a lot of background information that you need to know, so let's go over that first. In the game, players can claim star systems using a Territorial Claim Unit, or TCU. TCUs are essentially flags that alliances put up, and whoever owns the TCU in a system will be listed on the star map as the owner of that system. Here's how it works. After a TCU is deployed, it becomes vulnerable and is visible to every pilot in the system. Anyone with an Entosis link can attempt to capture the TCU during this vulnerability window. If a TCU is successfully captured, it enters a reinforcement period until a random time during its vulnerability window 2 days later. When this period ends, a capture event occurs in the constellation that the TCU is located, where the alliance which captured the TCU is considered the defender and the others attackers. 5 command nodes will spawn in random systems in the constellation, each of which will be respawned when captured. Each command node is worth 7% control, and the contest begins 60-40 in favor of the defender. This means that the defenders must capture 6 nodes to successfully defend the TCU, and the attackers must capture a minimum of 9 nodes. If the defenders win, then the TCU will be secured and become invulnerable until the next window. If the attackers win, the TCU will be destroyed and anyone can deploy a new one and capture it to claim the star for themselves. It's a lot of work, but it's worth it for the star systems as they provide many benefits such as resources, including minerals and ores, and sometimes NPC pirate bounties if the system's security is high enough. They also hold military and strategical value, as owning a system allows alliances to deploy jump bridges and Sino beacons, making fleet movement much faster. There are many other upsides to owning a star system, but in short, they are a central part of the game. In order to make this mechanic more consistent and reliable, players can claim sovereignty over star systems by paying an amount of ISK, the in-game currency, to Concord, the in-game non-playable security force. Sovereignty over a star system grants the player reinforcement timers, which essentially prevents hostile entities to attack the star for a set period of time, allowing defenders to rally to protect it. Without sovereignty, the star is immediately open to attacks from enemy players, and this is exactly what happened to the star B-R5RB on January 27, 2014. In the early hours of this day, Concord came to collect the sovereignty bill for a dead-end system in the Immensia region called B-R5RB. This system had recently been transferred to a player corporation called Havoc, which was part of an alliance called Nalai Secunda, part of the Pandemic Legion to handle sovereignty between alliances. However, when Concord tried to extract the necessary ISK, they found that the player corporation Havoc had left their payment unchecked. The user Manfred Sidious, fleet commander of Pandemic Legion, claimed that he had enough ISK in his holding corporation wallet and had autopay checked. Whether this was true and it was a bug or not, ultimately the transaction did not occur, and without the necessary payment, sovereignty in the star was immediately dropped, leaving the star system vulnerable to hostile attacks. This star in specific held significance, as it was a key staging area in an ongoing war at the time called the Halloween War. The opposing coalitions, CFC and Russian alliances, seeing this unexpected moment of weakness, immediately scrambled to get together a force in hopes of claiming this strategically critical star. The message was sent and thousands of players logged on and fleeted up. If they could capture this star, they would trap the Pandemic Legion's assets inside, which included hundreds of capital hulls, rendering them useless for war. Meanwhile, the coalition which had control before, Pandemic Legion and N3, tried whatever they could to regain control of the system. Right after the star system was open to vulnerabilities, Pandemic Legion attempted to recapture the star quietly with TCUs. However, this did not go unnoticed by CFC, as a scout had discovered this and reported it. CFC had their fleet attack scheduled at 2 PM Eve time, which is equivalent to GMT. But upon receiving this news, Lazarus Telraven, a fleet commander of Coalition Russ, made a decision to launch an early attack to destroy the deployed TCU. After successfully destroying the TCU, an alliance under Telraven's command, the Razor Alliance, took control of the station and set up their own TCU in order to capture control of the star. At around 2 PM Eve time, with an hour left before Nala Secunda could regain control, CFC sent in a capital fleet to the station. Lazarus Telraven had command of approximately 1,000 players with 255 ships. Usually, Telraven would share this responsibility with two other players, Mr. V and Villy. However, they were at their real-life jobs at the time, leaving Telraven with sole command of the entire fleet. Pandemic Legion moved in and tried to retake the system, but the Russians destroyed all the TCUs anchored in the system. Seeing this, in an attempt to at least secure the station, Pandemic Legion deployed what capital and supercapital forces they could gather in their patented Wrecking Ball formation just off the station. The Wrecking Ball formation is the name of a fleet formation designed by Manfred Sidious, designed to solve the problem of supercapital bumping. Bumping is the process by which one ship accelerates towards another ship, causing them both to collide and hence push the bumped ship off course. Some common reasons for bumping another ship include delaying an aligning ship from entering warp, preventing a ship from reaching a gate, station, etc. The biggest player piloted ships in EVE Online are called capital ships. This extends to a category called supercapital ships, which are either titans or supercarriers. These supercapital ships are invaluable, and so the Wrecking Ball formation aims to mitigate the effect of supercapitals bumping each other away from the desired area. Before the Wrecking Ball formation, there was a problem in that groups of capital would bump hundreds of kilometers away upon jumping into the system, as enemy fleets would single out capitals that are out of repair range of their fleets. This formation aims to solve that problem. It was set up in a way that carriers would spread out in a sphere about 15 to 20 kilometers away from the middle field after jumping in. The supercapitals would then jump in and go through the process of bumping each other, until they hit the Archons, which would slow them down dramatically, instead bumping the Archons away, which were significantly less expensive ships. This Wrecking Ball formation had previously defeated the CFC and Russian alliance, and so they operated it once again on that basis. Taking into account lessons learned in a previous battle earlier in the week, the Battle of HEDGP, which had been a resounding loss for CFC at the hands of Wrecking Ball, they took advantage of the fact that this conflict was occurring on a Monday workday. CFC used this to gain field superiority before the Pandemic Legion could respond, deploying their entire capital fleet to the system. Meanwhile, they deployed their sub-capital fleets to N3 staging systems to delay any reinforcements. After an hour and a half, the Pandemic Legion ships finally arrived at around 3:30 PM. A screenshot of text from Lazarus and his co-commander reveals his solo commitment to the start of the war. This war was special. Unlike almost every other large-scale supercapital engagement up to this point, both sides genuinely fought believing they could win. They continued to try to get every single pilot into system with the most powerful warships they could bring, and the game's time dilation mechanic engaged. Time dilation is a mechanic featured in the game to handle heavy loads on the server without the game lagging or disconnecting players. In time dilation, the game slows down to 10% of normal speed, with each second in the game equating to 10 seconds of real-life time. Remember when I explained the classifications of capitals and supercapitals? Well, Titans were part of the supercapital territory and were the largest and most powerful ships in EVE Online period. Titans have an access to a set of extremely large and special weapons called super weapons, or otherwise known as Doomsdays. A Titan can fit only one Doomsday at a given time, and firing this will deal immense damage to one or more enemy ships at the cost of a 5-minute cooldown and immobilizing the ship for 30 seconds. Titans are absolute terminators on the battlefield, and with that power comes at a cost of months of preparation. The time taken to build a Titan ranges from around 2 to 3 months at the minimum to sometimes 5 to 6 months if starting from scratch, and this isn't even including the time it takes for a player to train their character to use the Titan effectively, which may take up to over a year. On the other hand, using real-life money to buy titans using the in-game currency exchange, a basic titan will cost you anywhere from 600 to 1000 USD. A fully fit titan will cost you 800 to 1800 USD, and a titan with max skills will cost you 1600 to 3000 USD, depending on the race at the time. Why do I explain all of this? Because the two sides traded titan kills every hour when their doomsday weapons could fire, meaning that every hour at least a couple of thousand real-life USDs and months of time were lost. The following is a battle report written by Telraven, a fleet commander of CFC himself. Telraven sets up his Cyno on his hounds, which allow other ships to jump to its location, telling all the dreadnought ships, which are the capitals that are known for being DPS machines, to hold until the carriers load and Cyno. Once the carriers are loaded, Telraven tells the dreads to jump to a Cyno of their choosing, as long as it isn't the Hound Cyno, and switch to siege mode. The Titans are told to jump in afterwards once loaded. Seeing this, Pandemic Legion counter-escalates with their Titans and Dreadnoughts, calling for Doomsdays on CFC Dreadnoughts, meanwhile Telraven orders their Doomsdays on enemy Titans. Dreads were given the order to shoot alphabetically A to Z to try and alleviate some of the pressure off of Telraven as he gets the Super Carriers and Titan Doomsdays sorted. At this time dilation was holding at 30%, whilst fighter bombs are launched, quickly making time dilation to 10%. For the next 30 minutes, CFC Super Carriers, Dreadnoughts, and Titans are killing Dreads as fast as possible whilst losing Dreadnoughts themselves when Mr. V logged on and starts to form a second capital fleet. The first CFC Titan, Lysaniel, goes down, followed by another 17 minutes later. At this point, Pandemic Legion had stopped focusing DPS on Dreadnoughts almost entirely and are putting as much DPS as possible onto CFC Titans. In return, the CFC Doomsday weapons got off cooldown shortly after the second Titan went down, and to return the favour, they focused those weapons on Pandemic Legion Titans, resulting in 3 Titan deaths on Pandemic Legion's side. For a while, neither side had any real advantage over the other. Throughout this time, related battles echoed across the entire game universe as fleets tried to block reinforcements, destroying retreating capitals and super capitals, trapping pilots who were attempting to enter the fray. The tide of battle truly shifted when Manfred Sidious, the initial Pandemic Legion commander, handed control over to Vince Draken, CEO of the Player Alliance Northern Coalition. Vince Draken managed to concentrate fire to destroy several of the enemy's Titans, and also force additional Russian Titans to retreat with depleted shields and armor. As they say, however, overconfidence is a silent killer. Overestimating their success, they began to focus their fire on the Titan belonging to Sword Dragon, the commander of all remaining Russian forces in the field. This Titan in particular had very high damage resistance, and Sword Dragon drew upon his entire fleet to assist in repairing it. The Titan acted as a time sponge, and by the time this Titan fell, the CFC had managed to destroy 5 Pandemic Legion Titans as they had staggered enough Doomsday weapons that every primary target was getting hit with 2 to 5 Doomsdays, leaving the CFC far ahead. James Carl, a member of the Pandemic Legion, reported to the Associated Press, an American non-for-profit agency, that it may look like CFC is winning, but we're hoping now that all of our US players are online, we'll turn the tide. Unfortunately, when the time came around and the US players had logged on, they had not seen the numbers they expected, and the CFC formed a blockade at the adjacent star systems to prevent them from joining the battle. As the battle went on, eventually Pandemic Legion lost enough forces such that they could no longer destroy enemy Titans and ordered a retreat after nearly 12 hours of brawling. They switched their fire onto CFC Dreadnoughts, in hopes of taking out as many ships as possible during their retreat. Due to CFC's spy network under intelligence commander Tobias Daydorm, CFC knew that Pandemic Legion had ordered a retreat, and deployed interdictors and heavy interdictors to prevent the withdrawal. Interdictors are hulls which can launch warp disruption and stasis webification probes, which are one of the few ways to create bubbles, preventing anyone trapped in them from warping away. With that, the Pandemic Legion lost several more Titans, Super Carriers, and Capitals, with many trapped by the warp disruption bubbles throughout the battlefield. The battle definitively ended when the EVE universe went offline for its scheduled daily maintenance at 11 UTC on January 28th, disconnecting all players. When the battle ended and the players took a look at the losses, everyone was shocked in devastation. The winning side alone had lost more Titans than in any battle ever seen before, and the losing side had lost more Titans than thought was ever possible. Over 7,500 unique characters participated in the overall battle, with 6,000 people participating directly in the B-R5RB system with a max of 2670 concurrent players. An estimated 11 trillion ISK in assets were lost in battle, roughly translating to around 300 to 330,000 USD in real world money at the time, reported by an official report by CCP Games. Almost immediately following the fight, players universally demanded for an in-game monument, and even some of the developers agreed with this. Something on this scale, the largest battle in not only MMO but gaming history, leaving a mark on the in-game universe, must have something more permanent in-game to commemorate it, which led to the birth of Titanomachy. Titanomachy had been created using the brand new Titan Wreck models that were introduced with EVE Online's new expansion, Rubicon, which coincidentally released right after the battle itself. Titanomachy is a permanent site in the game, placed around the 7th planet in the B-R5RB solar system and is off-grid from the station, meaning that any player who plays EVE can make the dangerous adventure there and marvel at the scope of destruction. You are entering the Graveyard of Titans, a silent memorial to one of the grandest, most violent, and most cataclysmic battles New Eden has ever borne witness to. Hold your ship, and take a moment out of the mad swirl of your life to ponder your own impending deaths.